So I know I've been gone for a minute, and you're probably wondering, is Amanda gonna come back and talk about Last of Us? Well...
My God. It is a dinosaur! Joel!
Like it?
Episode 4 felt like it was kind of a building block, and episode 5 felt like the Dina episode, which quickly ramped up and turned into the episode where everything just feels like it's happening really fast. Then, episode 6 happened, and now we have to talk about that. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here to talk to you again, finally, about The Last of Us. Yes, I have been watching every week. I have been keeping up with it, but it just hasn't been making it to the top of my list of things to film because the episodes were kind of lackluster, for lack of a better word. I did enjoy them. I have been enjoying the season, but it's been a weird season. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the video as I talk about the previous episodes, but I really want to start with episode 6. So heads up, spoilers in effect, because we are going to be going into it, and episode 6 was a doozy. Episode 6, I think, hits the nail on the head of why we watch this show, what this show is really about. And at its core, the game and the show, what I think it's really about is it's about the relationship between Ellie and Joel. Even after Joel is gone, I think that's really the core of the story here. Because when Joel is gone, it's still about his relationship with Ellie because it still rules everything that she does. Every choice that she makes is because of the loss of Joel, because of her connection to him. This episode, I think, does a beautiful job of embodying that core element of the show, the relationship between Ellie and Joel. And it's also because Joel is back. Not from the dead, obviously, but he's back through flashbacks. And so we get to fill in the gaps on some of the stuff that's been happening with Ellie and Joel throughout the years through her birthdays. And what I'm really hoping is that this episode will lead to us really feeling that loss of Joel in episode 7. I do think that we felt it in episode 3. I do think that obviously we felt it in episode 2. But I feel like 4 and 5, apart from the time when Ellie's playing the guitar, you kind of forget that that's what it's about a little bit. And I think it's disappointing because that really is what the story, I feel like, at its core is about. So when you forget the core part of the story, you kind of just start wondering what are we doing here? These characters are interesting, but I don't know why I'm really here. So hopefully in episode 7, in the finale of this season, we're going to be getting back to that. And we're going to be talking about, that emptiness that we're going to feel as a result of episode 6. And I think that is the purpose that episode 6 serves, is to remind us of the connection so we can really feel the loss in episode 7. But I could be wrong. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, I haven't played the games. I only know about them because I did write about them, and so I would do research on sort of what happened, but I only know so much, so I don't really fully know where we're going. So tell me if I'm wrong, and actually don't tell me anything. Don't tell me anything about it. I don't want to know. I want to experience it. So please actually hold on to that. Episode 6 really hit for me as well because I feel like episode 6 is really all about this idea of loss, which is why I feel like episode 7 is going to be so emotionally supercharged and why I have faith that even though the season's been a bit rocky, we're going to be ending on a high note. The loss that we experience in this, there's so many different sort of forms of it. There's obviously the loss of life, the fear of death that we kind of get with Eugene. We find out what happens to him and how his story ends, and that was all really sad. There is, with Joel, kind of this fear of the loss of Ellie, this loss of this relationship that he has with his kind of adopted daughter. With Ellie, there's the loss of choice, and ultimately the loss of faith and trust in someone that she loves, in Joel. Someone who she thought she could believe in and is now realizing has lied to her for a long time, and that she even feels, I knew that, but I just kind of wanted to believe something else because I wanted to believe in you. It's a really, really sad, I feel like for Ellie, it's a really sad loss. And this idea of the loss of choice to give your life meaning, to feel like you were robbed of meaning in your life because Ellie could have cured everyone, but Joel took her away from that. And even though it would have meant her dying, it was still her choice, and she didn't get a say in it. Now, I think this episode really hit me because I also watched it in the middle of the night when I wasn't doing so well. So personal moment and trigger warning for, I guess, mental health. So, little personal notes. I have been kind of struggling the last few weeks a little bit with some depression. It's kind of touch and go. I have really, really good days, and then I have moments that are really, really bad. And I was having a really bad moment last night. It's not because of anything that's happening specifically in my life. I'm actually very happy right now. I have a lot of things that I love, and I'm having a really good day today, so I'm okay. But last night, I was not doing great. And I wasn't even sure if I was gonna watch Last of Us, because they're like, probably the last thing I should do is watch Last of Us, because it'd probably be super depressing. But I'm actually really glad I did, because the catharsis in this episode, that release of emotion that I got to experience through these characters going through something, I just felt seen. And it hit me at this time where I have almost this fear of losing everyone and everything around me, and kind of feeling like, what is my purpose? This fear of distance to people who are really close to me, but who sometimes I feel like, because of the despair, I can't reach out to. And so I have this feeling of loss and loneliness and this fear of being alone. And so seeing other characters experience that loss and seeing their fear of it, I don't know, it just reminded me that, you know, none of us are alone. And whether we're experiencing it because of something that is actually happening to us, or because our brain is playing weird tricks on us, it just allowed me to really connect with these characters in a meaningful way. And I thought it was so well done exploring these elements. This idea of fear, especially the fear of rejection, I feel that sometimes. I really felt it with both Ellie and Joel, this idea that they both want to talk to each other about this thing. Or I mean, Ellie really wants to talk to Joel about this thing. I think Joel is dreading the idea of talking about it with Ellie because he knows where it'll lead, and he's afraid of losing Ellie, because he knows if he's honest with her that there's a chance, a very high chance, that he's just going to lose her. But he also says, even if he had to do it all over again, he would do it again, because he'd rather that she's alive and he had what he had with her, he got to get close to her and save her, than not have her there. Which is like, and like, have the world potentially cured, and he'd rather be in this scenario with Ellie, who maybe never wants to talk to him again. And I just thought that is so heartbreaking and so honest. And I love how Ellie is preparing all these questions and things that she wants to ask Joel. But for her, it's also scary, because she knows if she confronts him, she already knows what the answer is. She is smart, even though sometimes this show, this season, wants us to think, I think sometimes, that she's dumb. She is smart, she has these questions, and she knows the answers. And I love this idea that even when they have this confrontational moment, and there's this fear from both of them of losing the other person, Ellie makes the choice to say, you know, I don't know if I can forgive you for this, but I would like to try to forgive you. And it's also really heartbreaking when you think about this idea of how fear makes us not want to confront each other, even though doing that can lead to a place of moving forward in forgiveness, and how confrontation can be good when it's constructive, and how it's because Ellie ultimately, because the next day she loses Joel, she doesn't get the time to forgive. She doesn't get the time to heal these wounds. So because there's no forgiveness, she's swept up into this place where she can't let go. She can't forgive. She's on a mission of revenge that we know is going to destroy everything around her, but you can't move forward because you didn't get the time to heal. And that is also why it's important for us to face our fears and try to confront things and forgive one another and to understand one another and to move forward. And so seeing all the way that that's beautifully illustrated in the episode, I thought it was just a masterpiece. Episode 6. There's so much that it's doing for these characters. The acting for everyone is peak. I think that Pedro and Bella, as always, they're just 10 out of 10 together. And it really, I mean, the other thing that really makes me miss is just getting to see them on screen together, because I just think that's really what makes this show work. And there's a reason that they were both cast together for this, because they really do a great job acting together. It's a delight to watch. They just take us through this collage of emotion that really showcases the complexity of Joel and Ellie's relationship, the highs of their relationship, the lows of their relationship, the things that they say to each other, the things that they don't. And there's so much left unspoken in a lot of the scenes. And I think that's also what makes them great scenes in terms of the writing. I think sometimes the best stuff that you get to play with as an actor is the stuff that isn't on the page, is the stuff that you don't say. And so there's a level of complexity here that is just great and that I think has been missing from some moments in this season. And we also get to watch this bond grow and strengthen between these two characters, even as we know that the loss of it is quickly approaching on the horizon. We know the tragic ending for this story, which makes some of these beautiful moments, like when Joel gives Ellie the guitar, or when he takes her to the museum and shows her the spaceship, and she kind of gets to imagine she's going to space. These ideas that we're going to lose all of that, you know? It's like, whew, that's heavy. It also makes us question, you know, what would the world be like if Ellie was able to have the time to forgive Joel? Would this quest even be happening? Would she be able to let this go because it would have been resolved? I do think when we're able to confront things and forgive each other and move forward, it makes us easier to let go of people. It's also the fear, the danger of what fear does to us. It makes us hold on tighter than I think we ever should. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is kind of let go of something. It doesn't end as well with Pedro and Bella in the episode. The acting from everyone here is really great. I feel like the actor that played Eugene is amazing. That shot that we have of him where who plays Eugene, actually? So it's Joe Pantoliano, who is from The Matrix. You might know him. He's also in one of my favorite films, Memento. The look that he has in his eyes when he's looking out at the view, and he's just trying to picture Gail, and he finally has her in his eyes. Watching that process in his face, masterclass acting. That was amazing. His fear of death made me fear death, and I'm not in danger of dying right now, but I started to think about just, you know, what it's like and what you need before you go and all of that stuff. And the idea that they think he needs to see Gail because he has to tell Gail something, when really going to see Gail isn't for Gail, it's for him. Oh, that was like, and then I just thought about, you know, what if the people that I love, what if I were gonna go and you can't be with the person that you love? How sad that is. That's so tragic. And we even get some really brilliant performances from, you know, the characters that aren't doing as much in this episode, but there's still a lot going on with them. We've got Seth and Gail here as well. And I mean, I can see why Catherine O'Hara was cast from this episode. I'm like, wow, yeah, because they needed that range. And she really does bring the range to it when she has to confront the fact that Eugene is now being brought back in a bag. Can I also just say the actress that plays Maria, Rutina Wesley, she's also in True Blood, she's just amazing, and I'm so happy that she's in the show because I just love watching her act. She also gets some stuff too, so it's like everyone's getting a little bit of something to do. Some people are getting more, but everyone that's getting anything is really bringing their A game to this episode. And it's not just the beauty through the acting that we get to see, which is exquisite. It's also some of these shots that we really get. Like, there's some really breathtaking shots in this, and some of the lighting, I think, the way that it captures the emotion, what's happening in the scene. It is really, really great. It's just a really beautiful episode all around. And I gotta say, episode 6 was pretty perfect. I think there was maybe like one little nitpick I have, but I didn't even write it down because I just was like, I don't even know if I should mention that. It's so negligible. So I don't even remember what it was, honestly, at this moment. Episode 4 and 5, by comparison to episode 6, are clunky. And I feel like it has to do with the way the story is being told here. Now, knowing what happens in part 2, they've obviously gone with a different unfolding of the story, a different flow in comparison to the game, which is interesting. I think they've done it to avoid controversy because part 2 was quite controversial when it was released. And I think that has to do with the fact that people just didn't really understand what part 2 was trying to do. And they didn't like it. And they didn't like it because they didn't understand it. And they just didn't want to like it. They didn't want to see the importance of what they were doing because it made people feel uncomfortable. And I think when people feel uncomfortable, it's hard for them. First of all, I think that confuses people a little bit. And then I think it's hard for people to appreciate something because they just didn't feel good. And they confuse the idea of not feeling good with it meaning that, like, the story is bad. It doesn't mean the story is bad if you don't feel good. Sometimes we do that for a reason. And so I think what's happening with season 2 is that they're trying to course correct a bit. And because of that, they're not trusting the audience as much because of the reaction they got to part 2. And so we're seeing a bit of a hand-holding media literacy is dead stuff where everything is happening in a way that's more clearer for characters' motivations. But then what that means is when we get the twist of the knife and some of this stuff, you're still uncomfortable, but it's not as intense as I think the game does it, based on my understanding of what happens in the game. And I would also say, just from someone that's watching the show, what I do know we are missing is moments of discovery. We're being robbed of experiencing these moments of discovery with the character. The parts where, you know, Ellie gets to find out that, like, the reason why Abby came and did this is because Abby's father was killed, was the one that was going to operate on her. Obviously, she already knows what happened. She knows what Joel did, but she doesn't really understand Abby's connection to it. At least I'm assuming. I mean, when we saw the confrontation with Nora in the previous episode, she basically acts like it's no big deal, like she did understand everything. I feel there's just stuff that they're not letting us experience. The other thing is the way that some of these characters are being introduced. We have characters who are getting their full backstory in advance of learning that they're doing terrible things, but it's like we know why they're doing terrible things, like them closing off the hospital and hiding the fact that there are spores that if you breathe them in, you'll get infected in this area. And so they close off the hospital. And we know all of that. We know all of that before we get to experience it. But imagine if when we first went into that area, we didn't know what was happening. And we're just seeing it through Ellie and Nora's eyes of like, what is going on in this area? And like, obviously there's infected and stuff, and maybe that's why it was, but then you realize the spores and you realize you could just inhale it. I feel like they've just shown too much of that and given it away so that none of it, it's like, well, yeah, obviously they explain that all up front. And all of that stuff also feels more, some of it more than others, but a lot of it feels like exposition. So it just doesn't feel as rewarding, as gratifying, because it's not about as much connecting with the characters as just explaining, this is why the character does something bad. I'd rather not be sure about the character and then kind of learn as time goes on, like, why they're doing this, because it makes it more interesting when you make a judgment on a character and then you kind of rediscover who they are. The discovery is what's important, you see. I like the characters, I like the actors, I like the story, but it just feels like we're cutting corners in terms of the impact of this story. The whole show, to me, honestly, should feel like episode 6 and episode 2. It should feel tragic yet alive. And I know not every episode can be as big as episode 2, but episode 6 just goes to show you don't have to have like a huge episode. It doesn't have to be massive to be impactful. And I feel like episode 6 is like a vignette of just birthdays and then, you know, the big incident, I guess, with Eugene. But even then, episode 5 has a lot more going on in terms of like the action than episode 6 did. And yet episode 6 feels more impactful. So you can still have smaller moments and have them feel big. And I think that's what's missing ultimately from the season so far. So episode 4, I'd give a 3. Episode 5, I'd give a 4. And episode 6, I'd give a 5. So it's just been kind of getting better as we go. And I'm hoping episode 7 will also be a 5, but we'll have to wait and see. I'll be back to talk about that. And then I'll be back to talk about the whole season. And we'll kind of see how it goes, I guess. I hope that episode 7 trusts the story of the games a bit more. The fact that apparently we're going to be getting, I think it was confirmed that this show overall is going to be 4 seasons, but it's not going to go past where the games took us. I'm getting nervous. I feel like this might be a Game of Thrones scenario and it's making me panic. So episode 7, I hope it delivers. Fingers are crossed. Let me know your thoughts on these last 3 episodes down in the comments. We'll discuss. I'll see you next time. And until then, friends, stay nerdy. Bye! And if you missed my previous Last of Us stuff, it's here.